Hello, Ray Phoenix here. Welcome to Let's Play Sonic the Hedgehog Part 3. Now we're in the most nightmarish zone of the entire game. The reason why a lot of kids were scared of this game when they were kids, because of the Labyrinth Zone, the dreaded Labyrinth of Evil zone. This was originally going to be the second zone of the game, but oh boy, this zone is so nightmarish that I wish that they left it to be the fourth zone of the game so people get some more, skills and experience of the game before we go on here. Sonic can't breathe underwater, mostly on account of he's not a fish. He's a hedgehog, so he doesn't have gills, so you have to collect those bubbles to keep him air so he can breathe underwater. Whereas Sonic moves a lot slower underwater. He can technically swim, but he can't like swim under the water like how Mario could just jump around, flail his arms around. And Sonic runs out of air quickly underwater too, so you really have to be fast. You move slower underwater too. This is actually, again, these are just like the Marble Zone. This level doesn't really prove much about how this game's like a fast game or a game about going very fast or speeding. It's mostly about just simply platforming with underwater physics where everything is much slower and more nightmarish. Where there's enemies that come out at Sonic from all directions. There's those spinning spiky ball and chain things. I don't know what those things are called. Kind of like a mace or something like that, maybe, or something like that. And I keep getting lucky collecting all these bubbles, so Sonic is just filled with air right now. Other memories I have of this Sonic the Hedgehog game, I remember this is a classic game I would try to use for when I would try to get emulators installed on my PSP years ago. I would try to get a Genesis emulator installed in that thing so I could play Sonic the Hedgehog on it. This classic Sonic the Hedgehog game, but oh no, they never really made good emulators for PSP back in the day, that is. nowadays there's better stuff now. Heck, I don't even really have much of a PSP anymore. It's in rough shape and the battery doesn't really work on it anymore either, so there isn't really, and when you plug it in, it's so loose that it might just come undone during a game, which is pretty bad actually, so yeah, I don't really count much on that thing anymore. It's hard to play PSP games on the actual PSP these days, which is more the reason why I resort to emulators these days. It's because of how more challenging it is to come across these classic games. Sure, it's still better than a Sega Game Gear, probably. Sega Game Gear had the abysmal issue of how it takes up so many batteries and they only last for like 2 hours. Yeah, 2 hours, yeah. I'm pretty sure most trips to their grandma's house probably last longer than that. And oh, look at this! The game felt sorry for me, so it just lowered the water level out of nowhere. It's like, oh, we're sorry to hear that you're struggling. Here, let's lower the water level. Ha! Screw you, we're gonna raise it up again. There's a block of cheese there that I could ride on. Just stand on the cheese and ride. I don't think it's supposed to be a block of cheese. It looks more like a block of cheese. More like, oh, what is this? It's cheese. What about this? That can't be cheese. This must be wood. No, it is cheese. Are you sure that is cheese? Yes, it is cheese. It has all these cheese and all this stuff is cheese. There's that weird enemy called an Orbinaut in the bottom left-hand corner. You can't kill them at all at first because they have spike balls over orbiting them. But then once they throw them all away, they're pretty much worthless. They're a sitting duck. And oh, look at that, the water level's rising. It's like the water level's toying with us. This would be a lot worse if it was completely random. It just rises up and down, kind of like making the picture jump. Like with that TV I had from the 80s, 80s TV that I had back in the mid-2000s. Good God, I hated TV in the 80s. They were so badly designed, so badly made. You get a headache if you watch that thing for a long period of time. It's a good thing we have better TVs nowadays. Heck, a lot of people don't even own TVs anymore. Some people might play this game wonder, what are those things Sonic is jumping on, smashing, not realizing that they're TVs? Because Sonic smashes a lot of TVs in this game. Maybe he has something against TV. Maybe TV gave him a bad name. Well, we know TV gave him a bad name years later, mostly with the TV show Sonic Underground. Sonic Underground's a show a lot of people seem to hate for some reason. Sure, it's certainly not as good as the Sonic Saturday AM show or the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, but it wasn't necessarily like a bad garbage show that some people put. It's definitely not one of the worst shows ever. I remember it was made by an animation company called Deke. I used to think it was pronounced Dick as a kid, but it's actually pronounced Deke. And sometimes now, whenever I look at the pens that I use at work, they're called Bic pens, but sometimes I jokingly call them Beak pens because it's spelled like B-I-C, kind of like how Dick is spelled D-I-C. But Deke is spelled D-I-C, but it's actually pronounced Deke. I think it stands for something, maybe, or maybe named after the person that made it up, or I don't know, maybe something like that. There's these spinning mace balls. I'm still trying to get as many rings as possible. Even though I'm underwater and I'm likely to drown, rings can never save you from drowning. A lot of things can't save you from drowning. The shield you get can't save you from drowning. Neither can invincibility. It's one of the few things that invincibility can't save you from drowning and falling into bottomless pits. That's the only thing that those can't save you from. There's a bunch of switches in here. These levels kind of gravitate around like flicking switches or hitting something and activating something. And this mess of a platformer. The good thing there aren't very many levels like these in later Sonic games. I can see why they took those out. I'm probably told that these levels, aren't that good. These lap room zone levels. Not that good. The backgrounds actually do look well designed. This level almost reminds me a bit of Mega Man. But then again, these levels are kind of like, they're like those unspeakably bad levels. Like most games usually have one world in the game or one level in the game. I just wish didn't exist. I wish I could omit this level. This game would be a lot better, I think, if this level didn't exist. Or maybe if it was something different. I know other kind of worlds could have had. Maybe a factory level, maybe a chemical plant level, or a hilltop level, maybe. Or even perhaps another casino-like level. There's always a spring card zone, which kind of was like a bit of like a casino-type thing. So I guess they wouldn't put a casino level in this. But yeah, they could have put something like, or even an oil level, like an oil rig level. There's like some good ideas for levels that could have been in this game. Well, I don't know, maybe they just didn't have the time to fit them in there. Maybe they had too many ideas going around. They thought they would just save them for possibly a future game. I was running through these levels really slowly, just moving around slowly through the water. Everything moves slower underwater. Water slows down. Absolutely everything. Just dodging everything. I have very little control. I'm trying to jump on stuff. There, I got that Orbinaut. Just got lucky with that guy. Yeah, he just got lucky. And I think you could dodge this spiky ball on a chain, the spinning spike ball on a chain. There's never Orbinaut there. That one actually hit my shield. Good thing I had a shield. This level also reminds me a little bit of the Tidal Tempest Zone from Sonic CD. Sonic CD was very similar to the original Sonic the Hedgehog in a lot of ways. Sonic's sprite looks almost the same. A lot of the other graphics in the game and the levels look almost the same as they do in the original Sonic the Hedgehog. But kind of Sonic CD in a lot of ways was kind of just the original Sonic the Hedgehog, but for the Sega CD. And with the whole added time travel gimmick that they threw in there. I actually played Sonic CD first, I think, way back in the day when I was first being introduced to Sonic. I think Sonic CD was the first Sonic game I ever played. I didn't even know what it was called. I thought it was the original Sonic the Hedgehog at one point, but then I soon realized, no, it's not. I didn't even know what it was called for the longest time, so I had trouble finding it. Same thing happened to Mega Man Bass. Mega Man Bass was the first Mega Man game I ever played, but I didn't know what it was called, so it took me years before I actually found it anywhere. I didn't know what the game was called. I thought it was called Mega Man 7 at one point, but no, it's Mega Man Bass. There's all those grounders that just jump out. I've played this game tons of times before, so I know where all those grounders are going to jump out. Someone once asked me how many times I've beat this game before. I said, I don't know, maybe like 30 or 40 times, being more realistic. I really have beaten this game about 30 or 40 times in my life. I used to play this game on the actual Sega Genesis. I remember one time back in 2010, I played this game. It was on the same night that Empire Strikes Back debuted on a specific TV channel. I played for this whole game in my grandma's basement. And I remember joking about how I could probably get, if this were an arcade game, I could probably get this entire game on 1 quarter. Sonic the Hedgehog, the arcade game, I probably could get through this whole game in 1 quarter. So I got through the whole game without needing to use any continues. I used to play this game a lot. Like I said, I used to play this game a lot on the actual Genesis. I'm glad I still have the Genesis. The Genesis is in like my top 5 favorite gaming systems ever. It was a system I thought was really cool as a kid that my parents wouldn't buy for me as a kid. I liked it a lot more in the original NES. I just had an original NES for the longest time as a kid. But I would much rather have had a Genesis, because Sonic is a lot cooler than Mario. Face it, he is a lot cooler than Mario. And this Genesis had some other really good games too. I mean, the NES is filled with crappy games, but the Genesis, not so much. Genesis has way more fun and awesome games than the original NES did. And that made me want one even more. I eventually did when I was allowed to get another system years later. I kind of had a choice between an SNES or a Genesis, so I chose Genesis. And that's why I never got an SNES. Yeah, blame Sonic for why I never bought an SNES. I never owned an SNES because of Sonic. And to this day, that is still true. I have never owned an original Super NES before. It's the only classic Nintendo system I never owned. But yet, I've owned the Genesis before too. It's one of 2 Segas, and the only other Sega system I ever owned is the Dreamcast. But I arguably never had a Master System either. I've had the power base converter for the Genesis, which allows us to play Sega Master System games. There's even a demake of this game for the Sega Master System. That's where I guess it wasn't that good. I mean, it actually was decent, but the Genesis version is by all means a lot better. But what do you expect? It's Master System. Of course it's not going to be good. It's a system that only really prospered in Brazil and supposedly New Zealand. Just running through here really fast. It's like the closest you get to running through, like speed running the labyrinth. I'm sure speedrunners probably love to eat this level up. They could probably run through this level a lot faster than I could run through it at. Where Sonic just eats air bubbles and runs around and gulps down air bubbles and those spinning things. Again, more platforming stuff. Well, this is a platformer, so I guess it makes sense. We're trying to compete more with Mario at this point, because this is probably before Sonic was... This is only the first game in a series, and first games in series don't often establish, you know, what the premise is going to be or what the overall series is going to be. Like, they don't know that a lot of the time when they make the first games in a series. That was the case in Mario. If Super Mario Bros. Came out, there was no status quo. No one knew what the game was series was supposed to be like. Then the American Super Mario Bros. 2 came out, and people thought, well, this is where the series is turning then. You know, like, people didn't really know about status quos of the series. There wasn't any, because it was the first game in the series. But then when Mario 3 came out, they became more stylish. Okay, so Mario games are like what the original Super Mario Bros. Was, and the American Super Mario Bros. 2 is a crazy fluke. Thankfully, Sonic never really had any games like that, and pretty much every Sonic game has the same kind of formula, where I figured we made a good game, and it worked, so let's stick with it. I mean, Sonic is like, definitely, like, good, you know, it's bona fide good. It's really hard to make Sonic bad, but yet somehow Sega managed to pull that off, too. They made a port of this game for the Game Boy Advance in 2006 to celebrate this game's 15th anniversary, and boy, that was garbage. It's like, how do you make this into a bad game? Like, you really have to, like, put a lot of effort into that, making Sonic bad, and yet somehow they pulled it off. They did it in the unthinkable ways possible. It doesn't really make much sense. The Game Boy Advance can emulate Genesis games and SNES games like Super Mario World, Yoshi's Island, Wolfenstein 3D, Earthworm Jim. But, you know, when Sonic came to that thing, it's like completely broke. It was completely broken. It's like they didn't even try to make a good port of Sonic. They might as well just have made a Genesis emulator for the Game Boy Advance. I bet the Game Boy Advance could emulate Sega Genesis, and they could have put that on there instead. This is Ray Phoenix signing out.